Options for subcompact crossover SUVs are extremely abundant nowadays. There are those from the Chinese brands who give you bang for the buck vehicles with great options and an affordable price. But now, of course, the legacy manufacturers such as Mitsubishi, for example, also wants to penetrate that market. And so they came up with this car right here. This is the 2025 Mitsubishi XForce in the top-of-the-line GT variant. Let's see if this car can compete with those vehicles and if this car is any good in itself. Let's first start off with the styling department, and the Mitsubishi X-Force really looks very sporty. I mean, just take a look at it in this yellow color scheme. It has a two-tone finish to it with a black roof that even gives you some sort of a floating roof effect. This entire front end looks pretty beautiful. You have a new iteration of Mitsubishi's dynamic shield front grille. You have these like T-shaped LED headlamps with DRLs too, and they kind of do remind me of like the Thor's hammer thing that you see in Volvo headlights. There's a lot of like colors you're getting here, so not only do you get like the two-tone of the orange and the black, there's even some accents in silver. Really gives off a very nice look. And on the side of the vehicle too, you can see that you have 18-inch rims, which isn't bad for its class, wrapped in a set of Hankook Prime 4 tires, Hankook Ventus Prime 4 tires. So yeah, really love those rims right here. Now for the rear, the X-Force also looks pretty good. I like how there's like this curviness for this tailgate, and you also have like these bumpers by the bottom that has like blocks on either sides. Really looks nice. Now on top, there's also this spoiler effect, and this tailgate is power operated, and inside here you'll notice that space is honestly pretty good even for its class. Look at just how wide and deep it is, and even the parcel cover, it's easily removable because it is just this thin piece. Now that aside, usually in this class what you'll get is 60-40 folding rear seats, but for this X-Force you actually have a 40-20-40 fold, which does increase versatility, and you also do have this false floor by the bottom, which does conceal your space saver spare tire. Well, the exterior really does look the part. When it comes to the powertrain, can this vehicle really compete against its Chinese competitors? Well, let's take a look at the power figures, right? So anyway, what you have here is a 1.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, which makes 105 horsepower and 141 newton meters of torque, which honestly is a pretty far cry from the 170 plus or 180 horsepower that you get from its Chinese counterparts. But then again, it is naturally aspirated, so in theory, maybe it's going to be a little bit more responsive, right? Well, let's figure it out later on in the driving segment. Now, for your transmission, you have a CVT, and in case that this powertrain setup sounds familiar, that's because this is also what you would get with the Mitsubishi Expander or even the Expander Cross. And in terms of fuel economy, it truly isn't bad. This is where it really shines. Inside heavy city traffic, you're returning around 9 kilometers per liter, and on the highway you can return 21.4 kilometers per liter, which makes it considerably better than its counterparts with those turbocharged engines. Now let's explore the interior of the Mitsubishi X-Force, but first we check the door. That honestly doesn't sound too bad. Okay, so the interior of this vehicle is something that you won't really expect when it comes to Japanese cars, because usually they won't really have the best materials, right? But for this one, Mitsubishi actually went the extra mile to give you some nice touches here and there. For example, this center panel by the dashboard, it's wrapped in like cloth, and it's also soft touch padded. You have like the extra soft touch padding here by the center armrest. You also have a little bit more here towards the side for your elbows. And even the steering wheel, the leather they used on it, it's okay. It's not too bad at all. Even this leather on the seats. Now for the screens too, it's a lot better compared to what you'd usually get with most Japanese cars. So right here you have a dual screen setup, 8 inches big for your digital instrument cluster and 12.3 inches big for this center touchscreen, which does come with wireless Apple CarPlay and also Android Auto. This is also pretty responsive, and it even does come with a reverse camera. It's not 360, but at least it is a reverse camera. Now moving further down below, you have a dual zone climate control. It's very easy to use. It's pretty nice. You have a USB-A port, a USB-C port, and for this GT trim, you even have a wireless charging pad. Now let's go back to the steering wheel, and yes, it is tilt and telescopic. However, my issue with it is that it doesn't seem to telescope enough for you to find your perfect ergonomic driving position. Nonetheless, you will notice that this does come with buttons for your cruise control, and it is also adaptive because this car does come with adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and even a forward collision warning system, which is again pretty good for a Japanese car especially. Now the seats, I find them to be a little bit too flat, but overall, you know, the bolsters on the side, they're enough to hold you in place. There are no power functions for it though, but yeah, I mean, for your daily drives, it really isn't too bad. For one of its highlight features though, you do also get an 8-speaker Yamaha sound system, which for a car of this class, it is on the better side. Now for the rear seats, first we check the door. Sounds pretty okay too. So here at the back, space is honestly really good, and this is one of the biggest advantages of the XForce compared to its competitors. Because really, legroom-wise, that is amazing, and headroom-wise, that is not bad too. Also in terms of width, the car isn't particularly narrow, and seating a third person here by the middle, it is 100% doable as long as, you know, it's a little bit on the shorter side for when it comes to those trips of yours. For your toys, you do get 2 air vents right here. You have a USB-A port, a USB-C port, and you even have this center fold-down armrest, which does reveal 2 cup holders. Oh, also, you can also recline these seats, which is honestly pretty rare in this class. So now we drive the Mitsubishi XForce GT, and driving this is pretty good. Now you would expect 105 horsepower and 141 Newton meters of torque to be lethargic, right? You might expect that it won't be anywhere near as fun to drive as its Chinese counterparts with 170 plus horsepower. And yes, for the most part, I would say that, yeah, you know, it really doesn't feel fast. However, the car does feel super light, so 105 horsepower does not feel lacking in any way. There is definitely more than enough power right here to have, you know, a little bit of fun. Now, when it comes to fun handling though, it is also pretty decent. I wouldn't say that it handles extremely well, especially for a subcompact crossover, but it handles okay. It's more than enough to hold its own weight over slower corners, slower bends, but you know, when you really want to corner this car extremely fast, maybe it's gonna give up a little bit. But because of that too, you have a suspension that is super soft, which does make this car pretty comfortable. The ride is, yeah, while soft, it is choppy, but it's soft nonetheless. So yeah, you do get jarred on about, but it doesn't hurt you in any way. Now, driving this vehicle too inside the city, it's pretty comfortable, not just because of that suspension, because of the steering too. It's super light, and while it's not exactly the most direct steering out there, it makes for an effortless driving experience. Once you do go up over onto the highway, the steering does tighten up a little bit, so you won't really be scared of driving this fast. Also, the advanced driver assistance systems in here, I find it to be pretty smooth. The autonomous emergency braking, the forward collision warning system, it's not too sensitive for Manila roads. So yeah, you can definitely use the ADAS system in our Manila roads without any issues. Now, for noise, vibration, and harshness though, well, let's start off with noise. It's surprisingly quiet in here. If you've driven a Mitsubishi Expander, it's a little bit more quieter than that. In terms of vibrations, that 4-cylinder engine is pretty smooth as it is. And in terms of harshness, we've covered that earlier, that the ride, while a little bit choppy, it is soft overall. One thing I forgot to talk about earlier is the transmission. So the CVT in here, in most CVTs, they get a little bit groany, a little bit loud. But for this one, Mitsubishi did a pretty good job of subduing the noise, of subduing all that rubber banding feel. So does it feel like a conventional automatic? Not really. But is it annoying in any way? Well, not really either. Now let's answer the questions that we asked at the start of this video. Can the Mitsubishi XForce, especially in this GT variant, compete against its competitors from the Chinese brands? Well, I would say that yes, to a certain extent it can. While it's probably not as powerful, not as fully equipped, it still is pretty good enough in terms of driving dynamics, in terms of the comfort that it provides you, as well as, well, the basic tech features that it gets you too. And not to mention, it is also so much more fuel efficient than those. But now let's ask the question, is it a good car overall? Well, I would still also say yes. However, there's a little bit of a price concern right here. You see, if you do get its Chinese competitors, you're going to be looking at around 1.2 million pesos, or maybe a little bit below that. If you're going to look at its main Japanese competitor, the Toyota Yaris Cross or the Toyota Corolla Cross, for example, for about the same price, they can give you about the same amount of car, but with the hybrid engine. So that makes this a little bit on the steep side. Nonetheless, at 1,581,000 pesos, if you're really looking for a vehicle that looks pretty good, that has decent enough specs on the inside, and is also from a reputable brand that has been here for decades, well, then the Mitsubishi XForce in this GT trim is an SUV for you to consider.